Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profitable Home Services Podcast. Once again, I'm so glad that you chose to join us today. We've got another fantastic guest for you, and we're going to be unlocking some more of those hidden profit leaks that tend to be sticking around behind corners, behind doors, under shelves, wherever they might be in your home service business. Today, I'd like you to join me as we welcome Rich Harshaw, the CEO and founder of Level 10 Contractor, and he's going to be sharing some really cool information with us. So listen up, pay attention, take some notes, and let's see what we can impact from today's interview. So with that, Rich, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure to be here.
I want to say right out the gate, when I was snooping around on your website, I came across an article that had to do with your About Us page. And you poked an arrow right in my heart when I saw that. I immediately pulled up my About Us page on my website and went, oh no, this is bad. So it's always cool when I'm, always researching a little bit on my guests up front when I can find something that I immediately can put to work. And I know you do a lot in the marketing space. Maybe you want to expand on that a little bit. Why an About Us page is so important before we head off into whatever other areas we end up covering today.
I think there will be a common theme throughout this conversation today. And the theme is storytelling, helping people to understand who you are, how you're different, why you're better, what they can expect when they do business with you, and saying it in a way that is full of passion, precision, so that people can actually feel it and understand it. So when you talk about an About Us page, typically when you look at About Us, it'll say, home services company. We've been in business since 1985. We're a second generation, third generation family business. We serve the Sacramento or whatever area. And there's really nothing there that's worth knowing.
And
So
I was guilty of that in my About Us page.
yeah, I remember, I'll give you a couple of examples that were really fun. So I work a lot with home services companies. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, as we go through this. Also work with remodeling companies. So that's two of the areas that we really focus with our company, hence Level 10 Contractor. One of the companies was a window company, and the guy that owned it was super laid back. In fact, he was one of these guys that in the 70s had been a hippie, like full on commune. He didn't say this, but probably, doing whatever psychedelics. But now, this was probably 10 years ago. Just like a super laid back, really cool guy. And he was all about his customers. He was like, he wanted to make money, but he was all about his customers. And so we wrote a headline that said, most remodeling owners are type A personality. Most people would consider me type Z. Okay, so immediately, just with the headline, you're like, okay, I don't know what type Z is, but I know what type A is, and I can kind of guess. And then we just tell this little story, like, hey, I grew up a child in the 60s and the 70s, and this is how I, run my business. I'm all about making sure that you have a good experience. I want to make sure, and just told his personal story. And it really makes a difference. And, so I encourage people, what is your story? And particularly on an About Us, okay? We'll talk about some other things, how you can tell your story in other places. But on the About Us, I like it to be a little bit more personal. What is the origin story of the business? Um, I remember another window company out of Pittsburgh. And this guy, he was older. He was in his mid to late 60s, but he was very, very tall, like 6'9".
Oh, wow.
I mean, and think about it. When you see a 6'9" guy who's like in his late 60s, like it stands out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to talking to him, and here's what I found out. Everybody always wanted him to play basketball back in the day because he was so tall, and he was actually good at it, but he hated it. And what he was really good at was he was an engineer, and he was in school for engineering. And after he graduated, he engineered a better window.
Okay.
So we write an About Us page that says, everybody wants to know, how tall are you? Answer 6'9". And yes, I play basketball, but I hate it. What I really love is engineering. And then we tell this story about it, his backstory. And it's a fun way to help people go, oh, this is an unexpected twist that this big tall guy, and we got a picture of him. It's black and white because the guy was old, holding the basketball. But then we have another black and white of him like with this T square engineering, whatever. So hopefully that helps.
Well, I think it gives readers a reason to stay on your page for a little while because it's not just a cookie cutter looking like every other website page.
Well, people want to do business with people.
They do. Yes.
Okay, now, like if you're buying a car, you want a Ford or a Chevy or whatever, that's a big company. So that's a little bit different. But
Right.
in a home service, if you can show that you're an actual company, you don't have to be a single, solopreneur. You could be, a $20 million company with hundreds of techs. But if they know that there's a soul there, they go, "Oh, this just feels good. This is what I want to do business with." So let's tell the story about how you became you,
Well, I
in
know
terms of your business.
some of us tend to be on the introvert side. And it's easier to hide behind pictures of your building, pictures of your vans or whatever, and not put your own face out there. And I'm going to put myself in that category. Doing this podcast with the first time somebody mentioned this idea to me was about 5 years ago. I said, "You are totally just beyond crazy. That'll never happen." And here we've been doing this for over a year and a half, and I love it.
You're telling me that a person with an accounting personality is introverted? What?
And so I think on my own website, I don't have a whole lot of pictures of me as a person. And my virtual assistant who helps me with this kind of stuff, she's always telling me, "Diane, I need more personal information on you." And it says, "But I'm this quiet kind of private person." And so it's harder for some of us than it is for those who are more outgoing and they're a little more open book to people. And we need people like you to draw that out of us.
Yeah, that's really the key, Diane. It's hard to even for people who are not introverted, it's hard for people to draw out their stories from themselves because they're so close to it. And
Mm-hmm.
also it's kind of a revolutionary idea to tell your story. It like very rarely is done. So yeah, if you can have somebody come along and say, "Here, tell me about yourself. Tell me about how your business runs." Like one of my biggest HVAC clients I worked with from 2011 to 2017, Horizon Services in Philadelphia and Wilmington. And one of the things that we really leaned into them was they had a on time or free guarantee. And that's pretty good. Well, so how do you put that into an about us page? And we did it a couple different ways. So we took one of the owners, a guy named Mark Aiken, and we created a headline that said something like, "I hate to wait. I can't stand it, and I refuse to make you wait, also."
Love it.
Okay, so then you get into the about us. That's the headline, and then the about us is like, yeah, from the time I can remember as a kid, I always hated waiting. I couldn't stand waiting in line. If we had to wait in line to go to recess, I couldn't stand it. And then we kind of went through a progression. Now as an adult, if I have to wait in the doctor's office in that little room, I just get up and leave. If I go to a restaurant and the wait's more than 5 minutes, I'm out of there. So I engineered this company to be all about reducing the wait because everybody knows when you call a home service company, they're going to be there between 3 and 5, and then it's 4 o'clock, and then it's 4:30, then it's 5 o'clock. They're still not there. That'll never happen. But see, when we overlay that on, we have this very how should we call passionate person who has this hate to wait. Well, now it really resonates.
It does, yes. And I can see people going, "Me too. I hate to wait." And that right there is the reason to call them.
Well, look at all three of these examples that I gave you. So I hate to wait. It's leaning into something that's important to
Hmm.
the customer. What about the guy that was tall, but he preferred engineering? Well, that leans into the customer's need to have a better engineered window.
Hmm.
What about the guy who's type Z personality versus type A personality? Well, who wants to deal with a type A, beat you over the head in the sales process? No, I'd rather work with this laid back guy.
Hmm.
So, it
Right.
always is something that in the ultimately benefits the customer.
Right. I love that. I'm going to say from my viewpoint, I had a business for years that didn't make any money. We were barely profitable for years and years and years, and I couldn't figure out what the problem was. Consequently, I figured it out and fixed it. But I do not want any other of my clients, my home service businesses, those out in the industry suffering like I did, working themselves to death for no money, year after
Yeah.
year after year, just grinding it out, because that was terrible. Never want to be in that boat again. And so that makes me passionate to reach out and help home service businesses and help them find those profit leaks and get that profit coming to them that they work so hard for. So you got where, what's your passion? What's driving it?
Yeah, telling that story, it's easy to say it. It's hard to actually figure out how to pull it out and do it, but
Right.
it can definitely be done.
Right. Yeah. So that's really cool. Now, you said that you would talk about how to tell your story in other places on your website.
Yeah, let's back up just a minute
Mhm.
and I'll introduce a concept. I call it identity. Not that that's the most spectacularly unique name of all time, but identity is this idea of telling your story. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to help the prospect, ultimately the customer, hopefully, but initially the prospect understand. So here, I'll give you a definition. Here's what identity is. It's communicating with power, precision, and passion who you are, how you're different, why you're better, what people can expect when they do business with you. And you want it to be instantly and definitively obvious, that you're different and better. So this is a communication challenge, really more than anything else. And the opposite of identity is what I would call platitude. It's where you say things like, we've got the best service, we're the fastest, we're a family-owned business. It's all the normal stuff that you hear. It's not like people hate that, but they expect it, and so it kind of just goes right over their head. They don't. It makes no impact. So if we can say something that's a little stickier, then it's going to have a better impact. So here's what we can do. We can look at this and go, okay, um, if you want to develop an identity for a company, you've got to look at what I call five pillars of identity. Okay, so the first one is going to be the products that you sell. The second one's going to be your workmanship. Next one's going to be what I call bedside manner. This is how you treat people. Then your core values. And then finally, what I call community and culture. And honestly, the fifth one, community and culture, is kind of a everything that doesn't fit in the first four goes into that one. Okay. So you got your products, you got your workmanship, you got your bedside manner, you got your core values. So let me help you understand how this works. What you want to do ideally is you look at each of these five and you say, okay, well, what points within these make sense. And I've got a diagram. I don't have it, on the screen right now, but it's got like 5 or 10 or 15 different sub points. So for bedside manner, it might be that you're on time, like we talked about. It might be that you don't have high pressure sales. It might be that your worker appearance is friendly, that their background checked and drug tested, things like that. Okay. So you look at that and you go, okay, let's dig into this. And what we're looking for is stories, examples, and comparisons. Stories, examples, and comparisons. Okay, so a good example I just used was under the category of bedside manner would be no waiting or on time, however you want to say it. Okay, so if you don't make people wait and you're on time, let's explore a couple of different ways to say it. So I like to use radio ads, not because everybody's on the radio. In fact, most people aren't, but because it's an audio medium and I can simulate it on a podcast. Okay. So here would be the typical way to say that. It would be something like, "Hey, if you need your air conditioner worked on, call ABC. ABC. Call ABC. We're always on time. We don't make you wait. It's really important because your time is important to us." And people hear that and they go, "Nah, whatever."
Yeah,
Meanwhile, if I
doesn't
go on
really
the
make you take
radio,
action.
yeah, it's expected.
Hmm.
It's expected. But if we can say something that makes people really stop down and pay attention, so we might say, like I said, so I'll take the About Us page and I'll make it into a radio commercial now. Do you hate to wait? I do. I can't stand it. This is Mark Aiken. owner and founder of Horizon Services, and I'm here to tell you, you will never have to wait uh, uh, when it comes to HVAC services. I can't stand waiting. If I go to a restaurant and I have to wait more than 5 minutes, I'm out of there. Same thing as before, right? I'm making it what would you call it? Relatable. If I go to the doctor's
Yeah.
office, these are areas where people have to wait and they can't stand it. And you know how it goes when it comes to HVAC. The guy tells you he'll be there between noon and 5 at 2 o'clock. And you take off work, you're waiting. 2 o'clock rolls around, you start getting concerned. 3 o'clock, now you're mad. 4 o'clock, you're furious. And then the guy knocks on your door at 5:15, taking his own life into his hands because you're fit to be tied. Okay, and it helps people understand, but it doesn't have to be no waiting. It could be anything.
Right.
So
Right.
I started working with another company. Um, so I worked with them. So it's been 10 years now, a company called Service Champions in California, very large company. And I met with Leland Smith, the owner over there, and I was telling him about Horizon. Here's what we've done. I hate to wait. And he goes, whoa, 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 we don't do that. And I'm telling you this, Diane, because I want your listeners to know you don't have to focus in on no waiting. It's whatever your company is actually really good at. And I said to Leland, okay, well, what is it that you guys are really good at? He says, a lot of our customers are older, so we really lean heavy into the friendliness of our technicians because it's important to our clientele.
Mhm.
Okay, well, what does that look like? Well, they we have no visible tattoos, no no long hair, no piercings, no facial hair. I'm like, okay, I got it. So we write advertising and marketing and web content around that. And so we trademarked something called World's Friendliest Technician. So we start talking about World's Friendliest Technician. Well, what does that look like? Well, it could look lots of different ways. So I'll give you an example again. This would be a radio commercial, just again, because it's a podcast and I can say it.
Mhm. Yep.
It would say something like this, and I'm going off the top of my head from memory. It might say something like, um, hey, this is Leland Smith at Service Champions, and I want you to know that the first thing that we check new technicians for before anything else at all is how friendly they are, because we won't hire people unless they're friendly. Yes, of course, we look to see if they're any good at their job, and we've got training to make people as good as possible. But here's what we found: you can't train friendly. If they're not friendly when they walk in the door, we immediately dismiss them. They can go work for somebody else.
That's
And
good.
so people hear that and they go, "Oh, they're serious about this."
Right.
Okay, I got it.
I like
Make
that.
sense?
Big
So you just got to
difference.
look at this: products, workmanship, bedside manner, core values, community and culture, and find out where do you excel, what are you really, really good at, and then let's find the stories and let's talk about it.
Well, I hope my listeners are taking notes because I'm taking notes. This is really good, Rich. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember one was a woman-owned business, which is unusual in the industry, right?
It is. Yeah, there's getting to be more of them, but it's still in a minority.
Okay, so you look at that and you go, okay, woman-owned business. Okay, so let's write again, radio commercial. We could obviously
Mhm.
put this content on websites or anywhere else. But okay, it's a woman-owned business. So what? Who cares if it's a woman? Does it really matter that it's a woman-owned business? Because the normal thing would be to say, "Hey, my name's Lisa so and so, and I'm the owner of XYZ company, and I'm a woman-owned business." And a lot of like maybe a lot of females might hear that and go, "Okay, that's good.
Mhm.
Go women." A lot of men might hear that and go, "Oh, good for her." But at the end of the day, so what? So here's what we've got to do. We've got to turn that into something that actually not only is noticeable and different, but also makes a difference. So we write something that goes something like this. Hey, my name is Lisa at XYZ HVAC Services. And, it's very unusual to have women-owned business. I remember one time I went in for a commercial job. They had 13 different contractors in to bid on this municipality, and I was the only woman and 13 other guys. And I got the job not because I'm a woman, but because I'm actually better at heating and cooling services. I was able to show them this and show them this and show them this. And at the end of the day, also, on top of just being better, I think because I'm a woman, I'm better able to understand what the problem is, build a rapport with the client, and make them feel good about what we're doing. Okay, so there's the woman part.
Mhm.
Now, somebody might hear that and go, I don't know if I like that. Does that stereotypes? I'm just telling you what she told me.
Right,
I'm
right,
not
right.
imposing this on her. This is her telling me. This is her story. Great. We put that out there. People hear it. Okay. It's a woman. Is a woman really as good as a man at, the trades?
Yeah, you had to
Yes.
work harder as a woman.
Here's our story to show that we're better than men at the trade. And also, we have this compassion part that also makes a difference. And, it's just wildly successful because we're saying things that people go, wow, that's really, really cool. Yes, I would love to support a woman in her business, but more importantly, I want it to be done right. And you're checking all these boxes for me.
Right. And we all know that when we put marketing messages out there, it's going to resonate with a certain group of people and it's going to turn off another group of people. And that's totally fine because we want
Well,
to do business with those that it resonates with.
I'm going to give you a teeny tiny amount of pushback on that.
Okay.
Okay. And here's why. Because the number of things that are important to people when it comes to home services is actually relatively small.
Okay.
So the number of things that you really want to lean into is it's not like there's 87 different things. People want you to show up when you say you will. They want the price to be the same as you quoted them. They want the job to be done right the first time. They don't want you to have to come back 5 times to fix one problem.
Right.
They want it to be reasonably affordable within the parameters of whatever that means. Okay, that they want your guy to not look like he just got out of prison and he's on parole. Like these are all things that everybody wants. Not everybody. Some people want to go to Craigslist and get the absolute cheapest person. That's fine. And so that's where I'm totally agreeing with you, Diane.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, if you can just tell a story that says, look, we do a good job of delivering the things that people just want, that normal people want when it comes to this category of HVAC or electrical or plumbing or whatever it is, it's not that hard to stand out. And the overwhelming majority of people are going to look at that and go, yeah, I'd rather do business with that than, whoever.
Right. And that's why you'll resonate with that overwhelming majority, is because they're going to look at that and go, yeah, I like that. I get that. That's something that's important to me too.
Well, look what else is happening here. And Diane, I know we had a little conversation about the Profit First book behind you and some of the books that you wrote behind you. And some of these smaller companies as they grow, this is you telling me this before we got on this podcast, they kind of find their profitability get stretched really thin because they start bringing on, people. And the reality is if you've got a good story to tell, you can raise your prices because ultimately you're going to have to be at the top end of the spectrum if you want to
Right.
be, let's face it, a 5, 10, 15, $20 million company that's actually profitable at 15 to 20% net profit. You're going to have to raise your prices. And this concept of identity is a major factor in allowing you to either maintain your margins or to get the higher margins. Because if you can go out and tell your story, you've now differentiated yourself. And when you come in and you're a little bit higher, you're a lot more likely to get that business because they feel more comfortable and confident and they trust you because you've told the story. And then if they can validate that story with online reviews that say, yeah, these people are great, and particularly at this thing that they say they're great at, goes a long way.
Yeah. I think it helps to build the trust a bit faster than the old About Us page. It just says we've been in business for so many years and we're great. Just ask us and we'll tell you that we're great.
Well, think about it this way. Let's say that you're doing advertising. Maybe it's radio or TV. Maybe it's mailers. Maybe it's a Valpak. Uh, any number of things you could do. And let's say that you take this concept of identity to heart and you look at your products, workmanship, bedside manner, core values, culture, and community, and you start pushing this message out to the marketplace. Okay, so over time, they're going to see and hear this, and they're going to understand and realize and recognize that there's something different about your company. Then, when they go to, let's say, Google, and they're like, hey, I need somebody to fix my air conditioner, they see that company name, they go, oh, I've got a positive identification with that company based on what I've heard. They click on it. Now they go to your website. They see the same type of information that confirms everything they've seen and heard in the past. Now I was going to say your salesperson, your technician, we'll call them a salesperson because they're selling. They show up, and particularly, I mean, look, let's face it, HVAC, you got to be good at selling the tune-up, getting people on the club plan, and you got to be really good at selling the replacement, right? And if
Right.
they've got all of these data points before your person ever showed up, that sale is going to be literally 10 times easier.
Considerably easier. Yes. Yes.
Literally 10 times easier because you've already softened the ground. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you haven't done any of that and you show up and the first point of contact, well, they see your website and that's the first point of contact and it's normal, let's say.
Hmm.
And then your salesperson shows up. Well, now you're fighting against the pricing concerns that they have.
Because they don't know how to compare you any other way. So price is a logical one to start comparing you with.
I'll tell you a funny story. Okay. This is in the roofing industry, but it 100% applies to what you're talking about. This goes back to the first year of my career back in the 90s. I'm old. 90, 95, 96, worked with a company called Lawn Smith Roofing. They were in Fort Worth, the biggest residential roofing company in the whole country. They were doing 50 million in sales at the time, which at the time was massive. Okay.
Hmm.
Sat down with them, like, okay, what are you guys doing? And here's what they were not doing. They were doing a lot of things, but they were not doing yellow pages, which at the time,
It was
everybody was in
huge.
yellow. It was Google back then.
Yeah. Yep.
They said, well, we don't do that. Well, why not? Well, because when people call us from the yellow pages, all they ever want to know is how much is a roof. So we don't advertise in the yellow pages. We'll let everybody else fight for that business. And I looked at the guy. I was like, man, for being this a smart enough guy to build the biggest roofing company in the country, you sure stupid. And he said, well, what do you mean I'm sure stupid? I said, well, because here's what you got to understand. When somebody is calling you out of the yellow pages, first of all, it's not like the stupid broke people self-sort and go to the yellow pages and all the smart people with money go somewhere else. That's insane. Number two, how often does somebody get their roof replaced? Answer, almost never. In
Once in a
fact,
lifetime, twice in a lifetime. Yeah.
the
Not much.
majority, 80 to 85 to 95% of the people that are calling you because they have a roof problem have never called a roofer before.
Right.
So when they call, they only know one question.
How much?
So why are you shocked that that's the question they're asking you? Here's a better thing. How about in your ad? Now we're going back to the yellow pages, and I know
Uh-huh.
people are listening, going, "Well, Rich, that's a stupid, outdated example." No, it's not, because now it's just called Google. It's the same exact thing. But in his day, it was like, why don't we say, "Here's 5 things you need to know before you call any roofer," and then we tell them the things that they need to know. And here's what happened when we did that: calls go through the roof, conversions go through the roof because people just need to know. It's no different with the HVAC. Uh, how much should you pay for a new heating air conditioning full system? Go ask that to 100 people. They don't
And
know.
you'll get 100 different answers.
But guess what? The only people that are advertising their price back in the day on the newspaper,
Uh-huh.
now on their website, maybe on the radio or TV, are the people that are selling super cheap or that are doing a bait and switch. So
Right.
guess what the price is when you actually see it advertised for a full system replacement? You're in
Completely
this
different.
industry. What do you think it is?
Yeah. It's probably twice as much as what they quote them up front.
Yeah, but the advertised price is usually 59.95
Right.
or somewhere in that range. 6 grand, maybe
Uh-huh.
seven, maybe five, who knows? And so you
And
look at that, and this is people's thought of how much the system should be based on what they've seen. Okay,
mhm.
how much is it actually when you go into the home? Well, my clients in the HVAC industry, their average installation is 17 to 20,000. They're doing the duct work, they're doing the high efficiency systems, the whole thing, 17 to 20. If you're going to walk in and get 17 to 20, you better be laying some groundwork before you show up.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They have a lot to overcome if they haven't been laying that groundwork, because then people just go into shock. So they have to, it's so important for them to have had information out there where they can feel comfortable when being quoted a price that high.
Well, and let's be super clear, because if I go ask 100 contractors, if somebody, if you have a sit no sale, you sat with them and then they didn't buy, what's
Mm-hmm.
the number one reason they didn't buy? And a lot of times they'll say, well, the salesperson wasn't good. They didn't vibe with the salesperson. Okay, maybe. But then the other thing they always say is, well, the price was too high. We were just
Price
too
was too
high.
high. Yeah.
And I look at them and I go, it's not true. The price was not too high. Here's what is actually true. The price that they thought it was going to be versus the price you quoted is a lot more, which is a completely different thing than the price is too high.
Right. Yep.
It's higher than I expected. 17, I can afford 17,000, but when I thought it was going to be 6 or 7 and now it's 17, now I have panic, okay?
Yeah. Sticker shock. Yeah.
And
How
I
did
have
you
to
get there? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now I have to verify that that's actually the right price. So how do I verify it? Well, I call another guy in for another estimate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all of this kills sales. All of this kills sales. So
Yes.
here's what I would rather do. I'd rather get ahead of this on the front end in form of advertising, certainly in form of your website, and look at your identity. Again, products, workmanship, bedside manner, core values, community, and culture. Usually with HVAC companies, we don't deal a lot with products. Most of my clients, they don't want to talk about Train versus Lennox versus Carrier versus any of that. They want to be fluid and able to change that if they need to. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to focus more on their workmanship and their bedside manner, and to a smaller extent, their core values and their community stuff. And if you tell that story consistently, again, this is why branding is so important. I know a lot of smaller companies hear that and they're like, oh, we can't afford branding. Great. Well, then just keep getting slaughtered by the people who do.
You're right.
Because here's what your branding should be doing. You should be telling your story based on these identity points that we just talked about. So, but even if you can't do that or don't do that, at a bare minimum, your website should tell your story. And then think about this. Think about this, Diane. Let's say that you set an appointment. Somebody finds you on Google, somebody reads your postcard, however they find out about you, they set an appointment, but you don't have a firmly established identity because you don't have either a budget or your advertising, whatever, is not either working or it doesn't exist. Okay. So now they go to your website. We should have a very robust Why Us section that breaks it down into 4 or 5 different pages for each of these: workmanship, bedside manner. We don't necessarily say bedside manner. We might say, how we treat our customers, core values. But then think about this. If you are not, as a contractor, using text messaging to follow up with your prospects between the time they set the appointment and your person shows up, you're that's just dumb. The technology is there. It's super easy. It's super cheap. You just have to freaking do it. So what about this? What about you send out let's say that one of your identity points under the category bedside manner is no no high pressure sales.
Okay.
Okay. So what does that look like? No high pressure sales. Well, let's do this. Let's write the radio commercial. Let's write a blog. Let's write a blog post. Most HVAC companies send their comfort advisors
Right. Right.
to week-long sales boot camps where they learn persuasion techniques so that you'll close on the first visit. Whoa, that's scary.
That
And then
is,
we
you're letting the insider secrets out there.
then we write a little story. Yeah,
Hmm.
when it comes to replacing your air conditioning system, you need to realize that this is how most HVAC companies make most of their money. It's very important to them, and they've got very skilled salespeople out there to make sure that you say yes. In fact, they take most of these people, send them to these week-long boot camps. Here's a link to 3 of the different boot camps that they send them to, and they train them on persuasion and compliance techniques. They are not going to leave your house until you say yes, and they're going to get you at the highest possible price. They're going to sit in your house for an hour and a half to 2 hours until you finally say yes. It can be very annoying, and honestly, and a lot of times it's not ethical because they're pressuring you to buy things that you either can't afford or don't need. At XYZ HVAC, we don't do that. We have comfort advisors or whatever thing. They are not high pressure salesmen. We don't send them to sales training camps. Here's what we do. We focus on what you actually need, using the correct diagnostics to make sure that you're being quoted the right system for your home, then we give you a price and we sit back and let you decide. If you decide to do business with us, we'd be honored to have you as a customer. If not, we understand, no harm, no foul. Just make sure that you don't get bowled over by an overeager, highly trained, high pressure salesperson. Okay, so there's a blog post. It's a blog post. It's sitting on my website now. Now, back to the text message. Set an appointment. They call in. Hey, Diane, you're my prospect. I'm the HVAC company.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, has your AC ever gone out like this before? Have you ever had it replaced? No.
No,
Okay. Well, I don't know if you are aware of this or not, but a lot of these HVAC companies, they use high pressure salespeople. Is this anything you've ever heard of before?
it is. And it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, like in fact, they'll send their people, and I could repeat basically what it says on the blog. I don't need to go through it again for our purposes to save time. But I give you maybe a 30-second thing that says, "Hey, when Jeff shows up at your house, I just want you to know he's there to help you make the best decision. He's going to give you a quote on two different levels of product, good, better, and best, whatever, however you say that. And if you end up doing business with us, fantastic. If not, no problem. Fair enough?
Fair
Great.
enough. I like that.
Now I send a text a few minutes later. Review our no tricks, no pressure sales agreement. And they click on that, takes them to the blog, and now we're having another chance to educate them before we show up. Maybe it's a video even, right?
Very nice.
Now, here's what people will say. Oh, well, what if they don't read it? Well, what if they do?
Right. Right.
What if they do? And then maybe we look at this and we go, okay, here's another thing here's another part of our identity is that we pay our people to slow down and take time to do it right. And then we read another blog post that talks about how most HVAC companies, when it comes to repairs, they have a quota that their people have to make it to at least five or tune up, whatever it is, 5 to 7 to 8 calls per
Calls
day.
per day. You
We
bet.
top our guys out at a maximum of 3 calls a day because we want to make sure that they're not just in and out trying to make more money, that they're actually helping you get what you actually need. And so there's this pattern of put it into the advertising, put it on the website, write blog posts, communicate it when they call in, send them a text message and an email before you show up. And now when your guy shows up, they're like, wow, thank goodness you're here.
What a different mindset from the customer side. Thank goodness you're here versus, okay, here he comes. Buckle up, get ready.
It's welcome guest versus annoying pest.
You bet. Yes. Wow. I
So
like
yeah,
that. Thank you for sharing these very actionable items. And again, I'm hoping the listeners have been taking notes. If not, we will have all this information down in the show notes for you because this is great stuff. Thank you, Rich. As we're getting close to wrapping up here, I'm going to bring out the magic question and we're going to get my bucket here that says proud to be profitable on it. Time to put some money in it. And Rich, I'm going to ask you for a unique or hidden profit leak that you see when you work with home service businesses.
okay. This is going to be an off on answer to your question. Here's what I mean.
Okay.
Because the answer is everything that we've already talked about. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
failure to implement an identity is a major profit leak. Now, here's why it's off on. Because usually you meet with my company, we'll meet with a client and they won't have an identity that's articulated well. So we'll help them put it into place. Okay. So they're going from off to on. Okay.
Okay.
Great. They get this identity. We start communicating power, precision, passion, all the different areas that we just talked about. And inevitably it works. It just does. I don't have any examples of where it doesn't work. Okay. Now here's the funny part. Company grows, company gets bigger, they start having a lot of success. Obviously, there's other things that are contributing to their success besides just this marketing component, but this is a really important part of it. Then they get a little bit bigger. Then they go, oh, we're going to sell our company. This is a big deal in this industry, right? We're going to sell out. Maybe it's going to get bought by private equity, or maybe rolled up into another brand or something like that. And here's what they do. They start trying to do what I call financial engineering in their company. And here's what happens when you let the financial engineers get in control of your marketing, okay, of your company, and more specifically, your marketing. They look at this and they go, why are we spending all this time? We're spending money on the radio or on TV, and we're talking about, I hate to wait. And why are we talking about, leaving things cleaner than we found it? And why are we talking about we don't have high pressure sales? Here's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about if you call right now, we'll give you a tune up for $49. So let's go out there and let's put tune ups for $49 and let's do our end of spring sale for $2,395 off a complete new system. And they go right back to the primitive caveman version of offer oriented advertising that builds no value, that has no distinction, no differentiation. And guess what happens? Sales start to drop instead of going up. I saw this with one of my clients that got bought by private equity. We had spent 6 years building this beautiful, undeniable, amazing identity. And then as soon as private equity came in, they said, we're not doing that anymore. We want offer oriented advertising. And they
Oh,
reverted.
no.
And then guess what happened? A year and a half later, my phone rings. Hey, Rich, uh, our sales are down. We don't know what to do. We think has to do with the marketing. It's all offer oriented. In my opinion, and you could say I have an agenda or I'm biased, and I probably am, and I probably do. But in my opinion, this idea of identity, it's the foundational cornerstone of everything that your marketing should be about. Everything is founded on identity and goes from there. So, what's the profit leak? The profit leak is you present yourself just like everybody else, and all your prospective customers treat you like you're one of 1,000,
Right.
and you lose more often than you win.
That's a great profit leak. Thank you for sharing that with us and with our listeners. Listeners, I hope you took lots of notes. This has been another one of our great episodes. Be sure and check out the show notes. Rich, what is the best place for people to make contact with you and find out more about you and your level 10 contractor?
Yeah, just email me. My email is rich, R-I-C-H. It's not Rick, it's rich at level10contractor.com. That's 10 with a 10. Rich at level10contractor.com. Obviously, you can go to my website, level10contractor.com. Also, I have a daily podcast called the Level 10 Contractor Daily Podcast, 2,000 plus episodes.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that with us. Listeners, thank you for spending some part of your day today. I know you're busy. I know your time is valuable. And I just appreciate you taking time to listen to this podcast and soak up the valuable information that our guests bring to us. Until next time, let's all join together and be proud to be profitable. Let's uncover those hidden profit leaks and get your bottom line up there to a nice, respectable, healthy profit. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.